Don't worry, guys, you can keep eating. We get ready now for our second guest speaker, our keynote speaker today, Professor Cardinal Warde. Barbadian born Dr. Cardinal Warde attended both the Boys Foundation's 150 technical papers and 3 textbook chapters in these areas. Dr. Warde is also active in encouraging Caribbean youth to pursue careers in science and engineering. In this role, he serves as the president of the Caribbean Diaspora for Science, Technology, and Innovation, and as the interim executive director of the Caribbean Science Foundation. Both of these organizations are focused on stimulating science and engineering-based entrepreneurship and assisting with the implementation of STEM education reform initiatives to promote more science and technology for economic development of the Caribbean. He has served on the U.S. National Service, the Science Foundation, the Board of Trustees of the Stevens Institute of Technology, and as a scientific advisor to the governments of Barbados and Belize. Please put your hands together and welcome Dr. Cardinal Warde.
Good morning to all my HC, QC colleagues and friends in the Barbados and in the diaspora, any part of the world. I want to say a special thank you to Mary Simmons for inviting me to deliver this keynote address. As you can see, the title of my talk is Preparing the Barbados Workforce of the Future, STEM Education Reform. When we speak of the future, we have to be very careful because we really don't know what the future holds. We have no idea what the impact technology will have on the way we live, work, and play 20 years from now, and even worse, 50 years from now. So what do we know? We know that the world 50 years from now, 20 years from now, is going to be influenced a lot by technology. And we know that technology is developed based on research. We have 3 ways of doing research. We've got experimentation, we've got computer simulation, and we have theoretical investigations where at the minimum you just need a pencil and a paper. So how can we prepare our students for the workforce of the future? Well, we prepare our students for the workforce of the future based on what we know today. And we know that research governs the evolution of technology, and STEM education in particular is what we're looking at in terms of the education for our students to be ready for the workforce of the future. So what we should be doing then is basically teaching our students the fundamentals of STEM, because those never change, even though times change. And they will become researchers. They will push the envelope for discovery, and therefore they will have a part of the future. That basically summarizes where I'm going today, and I will talk about the means of getting there, which is through STEM education reform. So let us jump right in. I'll start by asking some basic questions. What does the future look 20 years to 50 years from now? What does it look like? Where does Barbados want to be 20 to 50 years from now? Those are 2 different questions. And ideally, where should Barbados be 20 to 50 years from now? The answer to the last 2 questions is really what we're going to be talking about today, and that is, what should we be teaching our students to be ready 20 to 50 years from now? So if you look at Barbados, and for that matter, most of the Caribbean countries, I've listed here 6 challenges that face us: food security and food safety, non-communicable diseases, energy production and consumption, transportation, inside our countries and between our countries, money movement, big problem, and financial education, fintech, and the idea of investing to make returns, not so much happening in the region. And of course, one of the biggies, geohazards and climate change. We all know about the hurricanes and the earthquakes and the sea level rises in the region. So those are problems. And if you want to know more about those problems and what we might be doing to tackle them, there's a website here on the bottom. It says caribbeanscience.org/CSO. CSO stands for Caribbean STEM Olympiads. So let me put a plug in for the Caribbean STEM Olympiads. There are a set of competitions that are going to be running from January 19th to January 22nd, 2023, next year. And the application forms are due on the 15th of December. So we are inviting our students in the region. There are 3 different levels, starting at age 12 all the way up to age 21. To enter these competitions, you can win money, prizes, and so on. But one of the competitions is a computer coding game using a variety of different languages at different levels. But the games are aimed at solving any one of these 6 problems that I have here on the screen. So we're looking for innovation, we're looking for thinking outside the box, and bring your best to the Caribbean STEM Olympiads. Let me move on. So back to some difficult questions. Not that the first 3 weren't difficult, but these are perhaps even more difficult. Will Barbados have the political will and the financial capacity to solve the current challenges I just mentioned on the previous slide? And can they do so in the next 10 years in order to maintain its current standard of living? Big question. But even more challenging, in the longer term, is Barbados going to be able to make the educational and infrastructure investments needed to create the highly skilled workforce by 2050? Much longer horizon. That's what we would need to do to catch up or compete with the developed world, to create lots of jobs, lots of high-paying jobs, increase our standard of living. And it would be a total game changer if we can do this. So the question, repeating the question, what should we be teaching our students today to accomplish these goals? A lot of people have been thinking about this. I'm not the first one. And at MIT, the institution where I work, it's my day job that pays. People there, like people around the world, think that man and machine will be working closely together in the near future. And there's a quotation here from one of my colleagues at MIT, Darren Asimoglu. And you can read it for yourself, but it says a lot of historical evidence shows that the process of adjusting to transformative technologies is painful. And at the same time, we're capable of technologically and socially creating many new jobs that will take people to new horizons in terms of productivity and freedom from the hardest types of manual labor. And indeed, that's what technology often does for us. It's going to be painful. That's what is being said here. And some of the pain is going to come from the fact that we're going to be using AI software and all the social issues associated with the use of AI. But when man and machine come together, a lot of interesting things happen, all the way from displacement of jobs at the lower levels. But at the same time, we need innovation to make those machines even better. And if I leave that alone, pause for you to think about it and move on. So here's the model that I've been pushing for many years for economic diversification for the Caribbean. It all begins with STEM education reform, which is what we're talking about today. Innovation, of course, is going to be important. So whatever the education system does, it has to lead to science and engineering-based innovation. That innovation can lead to entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship can lead to new companies, especially new technology companies, which can lead to exports. That will allow us to bring in the foreign exchange needed to improve our standard of living. And of course, it would it would lead us to the economic growth and diversification that we've already talked about. We need to keep tourism, it's very important, and we need to keep financial services to the extent that those markets are still active. So, in a nutshell, here's a possible approach for Barbados. We should continue to invest in tourism and seize all opportunities to revitalize the financial service industry. And that industry is not a sure bet right now. But the approach that I'm proposing is a private sector driven approach, might be ignited by the government and should be ignited by the government in this case. Unfortunately, the government will have to borrow because the money is not there to invest in development of an innovative technology ecosystem with lofty goals 20 years from now. I mean, China often talks of planning for 50 years, but here in Barbados, let's say it's 20 years. And the planning of this technology ecosystem should be rooted in STEM education and technology entrepreneurship. There are lots of things the government will have to do to ignite this process. I'm not going to go into all of them, but in a nutshell, the government needs to find a way to create mechanisms to make it easier to get access to capital. And the government needs to continue to remove the legislative roadblocks and enact civil service reform that will make doing business in Barbados less painful. Don't want to go down that route anymore. We all know what the government should be doing, but let's get back to our thesis. We want to create more jobs because we're not talking about education just for the sake of education. We're talking about technology education here to change the landscape in Barbados and the Caribbean in a significant way. And one way to develop new jobs, technology jobs in particular, is a model here which I call the S-BIRD model, small business, innovation, research, and development. This model was copied from the United States SBIR program. The D is not there. A program that I participated in many, many years ago and built companies using funding from that program, and eventually sold one of the businesses to a Japanese company. So I'm living proof that this model can work, and we can make it work in Barbados with a modified model. But the model starts out with the government, down on the bottom here, providing seed funds to some startup companies or early stage companies. At a phase one level, I put some numbers in here, $100,000, but you can change the number if you like. And those companies would have written proposals, fairly short proposals, maybe 20 pages long, in search of funds. These proposals are written to the government. They're evaluated by experts, and decisions are made, funding decisions are made. There's a down selection to go to phase two, where the government might put additional money into a phase two company after feasibility has been established at phase one. And here the proposal looks more like a business plan. But the idea is that these companies can go on and access global markets and bring in foreign exchange. Some of the phase one companies may decide not to go to the government. They might go outside and bring in venture capital money or angel money or both, or corporate capital, and they can go all the way to production and global markets. And of course, those that got phase two from the government could do the same thing. The idea here in this model, which is different from the US model, is that the government would take an equity stake in some of these phase two companies. I don't think they should do it in phase one, but in the phase two companies. And at some point, the government should sell its equity when the company is successful and plow the money back in, and that's where the feedback loop here is, into phase twos. So if this model works and is managed well, taxpayers would no longer have to put money into phase ones. The returns on these investments could make this thing self-sustainable over the long term, and that would be a tremendous success here. So this is one of the models I'm proposing, but it has to be planned and managed properly in order to be successful. So the STEM-based ecosystem would have to begin with curriculum reform. STEM education curriculum let me use the word redesign, because really we have to redesign the STEM curriculum, not just in Barbados, but for the region. And that has to be followed up with STEM teacher training. STEM teacher training, is very, very important, because one teacher can train lots of students. You get a huge return on your investment if you put a lot of your effort here. And the government should start recruiting lots of technology companies to Barbados. We are good at recruiting financial services companies. We have to learn how to get technology companies to come here. And the question is, why should they even come? What is it that we have to offer? Sun, sand, and sea is not enough. It hasn't worked. We've had sun, sand, and sea for a long time, and the companies aren't here. So a different recipe is needed. They will come because we may have students well-trained in technology, a workforce that they can use. That's what will attract them here more than anything else. And of course, they would love to have very low wages as well. And there we have a problem, because our wages in Barbados in the region are not the lowest, they're probably the highest. And places like India and other places have, and some of the other Caribbean countries have much lower wages than we do. But if we are the high end of the spectrum, where we're contributing with our human workforce at the very top levels, they will pay the salaries. And that's what we've got to do. And of course, the model has to, whatever we do, the model has to spin off lots of technology companies so that Barbados is replete with all kinds of new technology companies 20 years from now. I'm using the 20-year horizon because that's basically a generation these days. The big question is, what should we teach? Well, I have a long list here. It's got math, physics, chemistry, molecular biology. This is the year of, or the century of biology. Biochemistry is in there, computer programming, computer science. I distinguish between programming and computer science. Computer science is a highly mathematical discipline with lots of algorithms being developed and being used to make computation faster, cleaner, better. And programming is what most of us do right now, at least in high school. We don't have too much computer science going on right now. But electronics and robotics are in there, environmental science. And of course, we have to teach entrepreneurship, because we're talking about students starting companies and young adults starting companies. And we have to talk about financial technology and so on. So this list is familiar to you, but the question is, what's in the syllabus? Because the syllabus is key. The devil is in the details of what you teach here. And the curriculum reform means looking at these disciplines and making sure that we are current and that we are competitive with the rest of the world. I don't have time to go into the details of each of these, so I'll move on from there. But what should be taught are fundamentals in all these disciplines. The fundamentals do not change. Time changes. Technology is going to change, because the fundamentals are going to be used in innovative ways to build new products and services that will change technology, that will change the world 20 years from now. So what do we have to do in addition to teaching the fundamentals? We have to teach design, product design, service design, in order to affect the applications, because the applications are often what you sell to the rest of the world in order to bring in that foreign exchange. This has to be done in the schools. That's where the process starts. And in terms of what we teach, problem-solving approaches, that really is the overriding direction in which we must go, finding innovative solutions, not just any solution. Normally, if you're a designer, the first solution you come up with is probably not very good. And after about 5 or 6 iterations, it gets better and better and better. And that's what we have to encourage our students to do, to look at designs of services and products that they make and ask themselves the hard questions. And the teacher should be asking the hard questions. Can you make it smaller? Can you make it lighter? Can you make it less expensive? Can you make it more efficient? And you keep going back to the drawing board. So plug in again the Caribbean Science Foundation and the Caribbean Science, well, Olympiads. That's what CSO stands for, Caribbean STEM Olympiads. We should, again, go here if you have a chance, and you can see that we have some of these disciplines, not all, and we're challenging our youngsters in the region to be innovative in these areas. So how should we teach? We got to discourage rote learning. Rote learning gets us nowhere. A lot of this goes on all throughout the Caribbean and the United States and in China. This is a big problem for education. We have to stop teaching in silos. Our students learn one discipline, or they learn one piece of science within a certain discipline. They go to another discipline, they learn another piece of science and technology and so on, and they're never connected. So whenever they see the first item, they think of that discipline. They see the second item, they think of the second discipline. That's no good. The homework problems, the quizzes, should cut across all dimensions of technology. Because as innovators, we take basic information from many disciplines and we put them together to create new things that may not belong to any of those disciplines in general. And so this interconnectedness is really, really important to help stimulate the innovative process. Grades. I love grades because I believe that they're best used to inform teachers and inform students. Informs the teachers of how effective they are and informs the students of how well they're doing. Grades should be the means, not the end. The grades are not the most important thing. What's more important is how much the student learns and how well they can think critically and analytically. And I reward critical and analytical thinking when I teach over getting correct answers. I want to see the details of how they arrive at the answers. And the same thinking is going to go into the Caribbean STEM Olympiads if you get a chance to go to the website and see what's going on there. Lots of hands-on laboratory training and learning. Very, very important. A lot of people learn by doing. And while theory is nice, and a lot of people can learn with just theory without much laboratory experience, but the laboratory experience really cements in the topics and the fundamentals for most of us. I'm not going to go over this slide, but this slide shows the approaches that are commonly used today for teaching STEM. Problem-based learning, solving problems. I can't overemphasize that. And using inquiry-based science education methods. Basically, the kind of stuff I talked about already. But forming teams and working in teams. Teamwork is so important. All big projects were not done by one person. They were done by teams. And having discussion within the teams and going around this loop that I show here. Hopefully you'll have these slides. You can study this loop. But you have to go around a loop like this sometimes many times where you define the problem, you identify the problem or challenge, you come up with a solution, the solution is not good enough, you go back and you revisit it again a second time. That's what we as scientists and engineers do in the innovation process in order to get a product that people will purchase and people might want. It is not luck. It requires a lot of training, a lot of patience, a lot of dedication, a lot of innovative thinking. So here's how we can create lots of jobs. We have a lot of people who go abroad, myself included, and we go into the diaspora and we become scientists and engineers all the way from bachelors to PhDs and beyond. And we would like some of these people to come back home and start companies. We should be encouraging that. And if they do start companies, others from the diaspora can come back and work in those companies. It's this line over here. And And the idea here is that you go work in a company, you don't like what's going on, or they don't listen to your ideas. You have new ideas. The company isn't able to exploit your new ideas. You go off and start a company. And then you hire people and they leave you and start companies. Well, we can do it in two ways, not just our people coming back to start companies, but as I said earlier, we can attract foreign companies to come down to the Caribbean and Barbados here in particular. And our people abroad can come work at these companies and leave and start companies. The idea is down at the bottom here, we can spin off lots of companies, lots of technology companies. We have 100% employment in Barbados if we could do this within the next 20 years. A lot of this is discussed in this paper I have here down on the bottom. It's on the Caribbean Science Foundation website. Under publications, it's the first article there. And I encourage you, if you have a chance, to go there and take a look at it. And finally, one might ask, well, what is the Caribbean Science Foundation doing to help? As you have figured out by now, I wear two hats. MIT pays my salary. Caribbean Science Foundation does not. I am co-executive director of the Caribbean Science Foundation. And we've been around since 2010, and we have a whole bunch of education and entrepreneurial programs aimed at solving exactly the problem that I'm talking about today, economic development for the region. Our flagship program is SPICE, Student Program for Innovation in Science and Engineering, SPICE with an S. Students for this program come from Belize in the west, all the way through the Caribbean to Guyana in the south. And it's a boot camp. They spend 5 weeks with us, and they take all kinds of STEM subjects, but they all want to go to their dream university in the world. And right now, there are about 14 of them at MIT. 3 or 4 have already graduated. There are 3 at Harvard, and 3 have gone to Stanford, and Columbia has about 5, and there are several in the UK. But these are some of our brightest students in the region. And we've asked them to come back to the region and give back. The same diagram I just showed you in the previous slide. In Barbados, we've been doing the Barbados Junior Robotics Camp. We've stopped for the last 2 or 3 years because of the pandemic, but we're going to resume in 2013 in the summer. Computer coding workshops are going on right now. This serves all of the English-speaking Caribbean countries. The next offering of these is February 4th, I believe, and it runs for 14 weeks, 14 Saturday mornings. We have Python and we have website development. Caribbean STEM Olympiads, I already have been publicizing this today twice, so you should go take a look at that. And in the past, we've done teacher training workshops with the Caribbean Academy of Sciences in about 6 or 7 different Caribbean countries. And CariVenture is our hope and goal to help stimulate technology development by making funding available for Caribbean, young Caribbean companies. But anyway, this brings us to the end of my presentation. And so those of you who have been able to listen to me today, hopefully you can cogitate on what I've said and do anything you can in your power to help Barbados implement a powerful workforce in the future so that the next 20 years, we look very different than we do today, and that we have advanced significantly. The standard of living has gone up, and we are competitive on the global markets with all of the products that we'll develop and sell. Thank you very much.
pay more to do subjects like literature or visual arts when we want to do courses such as that. And if we want to bring more technology companies into Barbados, wouldn't that be placing a strain on our environment by the resources that might be exhausted and also by the biofuels that might be burned? Well, not really biofuels, but the fuels that might be burned, would that be causing more strain on our air and causing pollution?
Dr. Ward, are you still there?
You hear me? The 'cause I could not hear the question. I heard the speaker, but it was muffled. I didn't have a clear signal. I can hear you, yes.
You are advocating what happens to the arts and other areas
Oh, it's a,
to respond to that part.
yeah, that's an excellent question. I am never one to propose that a person should be educated only in STEM. The institution that I come from and that I'm at currently,
Much for your questions and your participation. And I hand back to our MC.